right, we made it to 2026. Happy New Year, listeners.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Yeah, we're ready for an entirely new year of music.
I'm looking forward to it. Already the new releases are coming out.
Yeah, got a few good things, at least a few interesting things. Nothing really big yet, but I was pretty entertained this week, I have to say.
Yeah, and I'm excited about next week as well.
Oh, wow, already. Let's do this one first, though.
You're listening to Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. This is episode 242, our first episode of 2026. I'm your co-host, Russ.
And I'm your co-host, Mike. I'm still here. I'm always amazed at that.
Before we get into things for the new year, I want to go back to our last episode that came out right on December 30th, where we talked about our favorites of 2025. And I want to thank Antonio Martino for sharing that episode on his Facebook pages. Our list of favorites included bass clarinetist Matteo Pastorino's Light Side on Antonio's AMA record label. So thanks for sharing. And Antonio's got a new recording coming out later this month, and I'm really looking forward to checking out some new music there as well.
Yeah, and we've been hearing also from our friend Nicholas Sivelov, the composer, pianist, and he's got a new album out, a new digital live album, featuring 24 preludes and fugues from Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, books 1 and 2. This is not the complete set. He's just kind of mixed and matched them, I guess. And this was released on January 9th, 2026, and follows his earlier studio recording of the full Well-Tempered Clavier from 2015, and it also aligns with his ongoing Bach Complete project on the AMC Amchara classical label. And you can see a video of the Prelude in C-sharp minor on YouTube if you want to check that out. I also want to mention he's got a great piano concerto, his 6th piano concerto, subtitled Earth Rights, and that was released on August 22nd, 2025 as a digital file. And we didn't feature it because it's just the piano concerto. It's pretty short. But there's rumor that Naxos will release that with another piece, and if that happens, we'll put it on the podcast. So definitely check that out, too. His piano concerto number 6, Nicholas Sivelov, Sivelov.
Yeah, our interview with him was really interesting on a lot of levels.
Yeah, he keeps in touch. I like that about him.
That's nice, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing more of his piano playing, always, of course, but I also want to hear some more of his orchestrations and compositions. Those are really interesting.
Right, his Bach playing, I think it gets more into the older sort of romantic style. He uses the sustain. He kind of plays more like a romantic pianist. He's not really doing the period performance style, although I'm sure he's aware of it. But he likes that sustain, and he gets all the voices nicely balanced too.
Well, come on, Naxos, get something new out like that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, get that piano concerto number 6 mashed up with something. We'll put it on. We'll talk. Maybe we'll even get him to comment on it too.
Yeah. Well, before we get into happy new things, I think we've got a farewell for this episode to go out as well.
Yeah, we've got an early death this year.
All right, let me get over to the piano here already.
And we learned that the distinguished Swiss flautist Peter Lukas Graf, he's also a conductor and pedagogue, passed away on January 4th, 2026, at the age of 96, just one day shy of his 97th birthday. Well, I'd say he made it to the finish line, though. So.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, he was born in Zurich on January 5th, 1929, studied with masters like André Jaunet and Marcel Moise, and he rocketed to fame at 21 years old with his landmark recording of Iber's Flute Concerto. And his versatile career blended solo recitals, over 40 acclaimed recordings. As professor at Basel Music Academy for over 2 decades, he shaped generations through masterclasses and seminal books like The Singing Flute, which I'm sure flautists are probably familiar with. And he earned honors such as the National Flute Association's Lifetime Achievement Award, so rest in peace, Peter Lukas Graf.
Yeah, 96.
Yeah, I hope I get that far.
We're ready to roll into the new year here, and as always, in the episode description, you're going to find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings we're going to discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist where you can get all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. Now, if you can't see the full description, or if the recording list and links are hard to access wherever you're listening to us now, just come over and check us out on our host site. That's Podbean, podbean.com. Everything's easy to follow over there. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe wherever you enjoy listening to us, and tell a music-loving friend. Help us grow our audience. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that helps us get listed in the music category recommendations, and that's another way we can reach a larger audience. Come and follow us on our Facebook page, too, to get extra info and more new releases throughout the week. I put up a few recordings that I found this Friday there. You can leave a message or comment on Facebook as well. You can check us out on X. I post the new episode links over there as well. We're Adult Music Pod there. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We're going to play music samples as always, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. And Mike has done it. He's managed to pick all new 2026 recordings for this episode, even though we chose the recordings almost 2 weeks ago.
Right. These all came out on January 2nd. I just got lucky, really. And the first album, not only is it a new album, but it's kind of funny that the title is Le Carillon de Regret. Now, the thing I like about this title is that it seems to have been formed the way we kind of create our titles on adult music, because there are two pieces on this album. One is called Le Carillon de Passy, and the other one is Le Regret, and they kind of put the two together.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
We do that often when we come up with our crazy titles. If you're wondering how we come up with these things, it's just silly things like that. Anyway, Le Carillon de Regret, it kind of means the carillon, that bell sort of thing in the church tower.
Right.
Of regrets, okay, or of sadness. We'll find out why we have this title in just a moment. The artists on this album are Alex Jellici, who was born in Bolzano in Italy, which is in the South Tyrol, and that borders with Austria. And he plays the viola da gamba. And Matías Lanz from Switzerland, Winterthur, on the harpsichord. And this is on the Solo Musica label. Now, this album has sort of a Swiss theme to it, too. It's a program of Baroque music, or mostly. There are 3 contemporary works on it, too. And it can be enjoyed without knowing anything about these works. But there's a narrative that the two musicians have constructed around the program to make it a little more fun. And I want to kind of unpack that a little bit, too. I'd like to thank viola da gambist Alex Jellici for sending me the booklet note with impressive speed after I requested it. You never know. Sometimes it takes weeks.
The further south in Italy you go, the longer it takes.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, he's close to the German-Austrian border, so very efficient up there. There are a lot of compositions that fall outside the established canons, say the booklet notes. Program pieces from the Baroque era especially draw connoisseurs because they're very strange. We heard a few of these, like on the Isabel Faust's Telemann album. We heard the Frog Concerto, where her violin is imitating the croaking of frogs. There are all sorts of pieces like this from the Baroque era. Now, this particular program is formed around a piece by Marin Marais, who's the French viola da gambist. If you know the movie Tout le matin du monde, he's one of the characters in that movie. And this piece of his is called Tableau d'Opération de la Taille, which has a medical background. I'll explain more about it when we get to it. We're going to hear that on track 4. The two musicians here have formed a program that draws a portrait of the patient that's portrayed in that piece. And I'll give you the narrative as we go. Let's get into this album. The album features the music of contemporary Swiss composers as well, and there's also one historical Swiss composer. Okay, the first piece is by a French composer, Antoine Forcare. Now, we've heard his music on the podcast before, played by Justin Taylor, who we really like, whose harpsichord playing we really like. This is Le Carillon de Passy, and I believe, I didn't check, but I believe he played this one too on his album. I should have checked first. But anyway, here, Passy is a location now in Paris, but it used to be a separate village back in the day. The duo here imagines the patient to come from Passy, a town near Paris. This is in the 16th arrondissement. It's also where Claude Debussy's grave is. I actually visited it once. We get a pleasant beginning to the program with the gamba playing a series of repeating phrases that act as a sort of home base for the material that comes in between. Let's just set the mood and do a little sample here. Yeah, that viola da gamba sound really seduced audiences back in the 80s and has continued to do so ever since it was reintroduced as part of the period instruments movement. Sounds great here. That's Alex Jellici playing that. So we had a pleasant beginning to the program, and the piece itself is very stable harmonically. Sound quality on this recording is solid, with the harpsichord getting a realistically quiet sound, chiming away kind of in the back, and the viola da gamba up front, but not overly so. So there's a good balance between the two instruments. All right, we're going right to a contemporary composer on track 2, Stephanie Hensler, born in Baden, Switzerland, 1986, so she's a generation younger than us. This is her piece, Spinage und Bau, composed 2023 to 2024, so hot off the press. The title means espionage and construction, and the piece is inspired by the preludes non mesurées of early French music. Non mesurées means there are no bar lines, I guess, so we don't know where the beat falls. It sounds more like an improvisation, like you're just kind of like dreaming up the piece as you play it. This piece forms part of the music drama Die kluge Schlange, or the clever snake. It's the story of Hortensia von Salis, a 17th century scholar from the canton of Braubunden and a proto-feminist. And this is someone whom the Lauts Collective, who is Stephanie Hensler, the composer, and Laura Hensler, who's a designer, so I guess she does the stage sets, so the two of them together sort of do these productions. They've transported the story into the present day in a thoroughly humorous manner. For the music we hear here, Hortensia is on stage spying on her fellow villagers while proceeding with the construction of a kind of pirate radio studio assembled out of assorted materials from which she can transmit her progressive Rights of Women podcast. I guess this is really updated stuff. The construction part is based on Marais' piece Le Moulinet from the third book of his Pièce de Viol, number 91. Now, as for the piece itself, there's a lot of space left between tones at the opening in the harpsichord. The gamba comes in with a sustained crescendo, a sound you rarely hear on it, so this really does kind of sound contemporary. At around 40 seconds, a Baroque-sounding melody emerges, then suddenly starts sustaining on one note. The piece itself moves more slowly than a Baroque slow movement would, sustaining a lot of tones, and using some harsh double stops in the viola da gamba that I found intriguing. Again, I'm so used to hearing this as a Baroque instrument that whenever you hear something, an odd harmony on it, is always a little bit of a surprise. At 2 minutes and 45 seconds, a rather leering waltz theme emerges, sounding a bit sinister, and that's the bit that I decided to sample. So let's hear a bit of that. This is the waltz theme at around 2 minutes and 45 seconds into this piece.
Sounds like some bow bouncing there.
Yeah, a little bow bounce. He's really hitting the strings hard there. So a bit of a decadent sound there on that piece. It kind of reminds me of a Tom Waits song in a way. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like he has that kind of that sort of rhythm that he uses. This all disintegrates and the piece ends, and then we get to a composer that featured on one of my favorite albums last year, Robert de Vissé, La Mascarade, and I believe we heard Ralph Lislevand play this piece, actually. This is arranged by Stephanie Hensler here, who composed the previous piece. This portrays Hortensia preparing herself to conduct an autopsy, being a pioneer in the field of medicine as well. This is from the previous, story. This brings us back to our patient in the next track. The harpsichord here plays an ostinato pattern as the viola da gamba plays a mysterious sounding melody. It does get out of that pattern eventually, and the reason why it's so mysterious is because it's a masquerade, a masquerade. The piece has a heavy lilt to it that I find appealing, and it's pretty brief. Track 4, this is really the centerpiece of the album, Marais, Le Tableau de l'Opération de la Taille. This piece, the one that the entire program is built around, portrays the removal of a urinary calculus. That's a stone. Okay, in the urinary tract. The piece apparently does this in rather scary detail, although the sound of it isn't very scary. But, removal of a urinary calculus means surgically removing a stone from somewhere in the urinary tract. This would have been done without any anesthetic, and not everyone survived this operation back in the day.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Jeez. Okay, the calculus is the stone itself, made of crystallized minerals in the urine. Marais produces an entire printed set of episodes that virtually narrate what the music is portraying. It's pretty long, 9 lines in the booklet, so I'll have to let the listeners find it for themselves. Marais went through such an operation in 1720 when he was in his mid-60s, and was lucky enough, unlike some of his contemporaries, to survive the operation. The piece starts with a calm and then a bit of trepidation to it in its stuttering phrases. It's only 2 minutes and 22 seconds long, and yet all of these events happen, I guess, line by line. A lot of moods are explored. At around the 1 minute and 30-second mark, the viola da gamba begins making an impassioned plea of a kind you rarely hear in Marais. This must have been a really painful part of the operation. Let's hear it. I feel like this instrument can't get out of that melancholy state. For a moment there at the very beginning, it sounded a little bit like modern cello writing, so you had a bit of creativity there. The music at the end settles down to its opening mood and ends calmly. It doesn't seem as eventful to our ears as the program would indicate, but you might want to follow it with the program. It might make it a little more interesting. Track 5, Hans-Eugen Frischknecht, a Swiss composer, born in 1939, so he's a contemporary composer. And this piece is called Entwicklung, which means development, for solo harpsichord, composed in 1977. Here, in the program that we're following for this patient, the patient of the previous work gradually regains his self-possession. Contemporary composers leave a lot of silence in their music, as I mentioned earlier, and we get that here from Frischknecht, with the harpsichord playing individual notes followed by long pauses. They finally latch on to a longer idea, building it up from a single note. This is rather some clever programming here, as the piece seems to put itself together as it goes. The opening develops into chords played with a slow Morse code rhythm, and the sound of the harpsichord is manipulated as the piece goes on. Let's hear it kind of towards the end. Again, it's not what you normally expect to hear from a harpsichord. The piece ends on a final-sounding consonant chord. Track 6, we go to a historic Swiss composer, Gaspard Fritz. Lived 1716 to 1783. This is a Largo from 6 sonatas for violin solo and bass, opus 3, number 5, the Largo movement of that work. Here we imagine our patient being sent away to recuperate. His neighbor recommends a stay with one of his protégés, who happens to be Voltaire. It's great when you have famous friends, huh? So our patient goes to Geneva and hears music by Swiss composer Gaspard Fritz, which we're going to hear here. The viola da gamba melody is attractive and reaches up high in the instrument's range. The piece itself is warm-sounding for the most part. The melody brightens into the higher end at around the 2-minute mark, and here the piece becomes touching in its light melancholy. I'm going to go into that 2-minute mark part of the movement. Now in track 7, we hear Le Carillon de Passy again, Antoine Forqueret's piece that we already heard on track 1. This time, it's a version for harpsichord by Jean-Baptiste Forqueret, another one of the Forquerets who, I guess, arranged this. And hearing this piece again indicates that we are back in Passy. Here the piece is played by solo harpsichord, and the Carillon sense of the piece is better conveyed by the harpsichord. The two performances of this work on the album each pull out different qualities of it. Once again, Matías Lanz on the harpsichord makes use of the various changes of timbre his instrument is capable of. This harpsichord version of the piece comes across more somberly than the opening track, which is fitting for the program. I guess our patient is tired. Clever stuff. Track 8, we have a third Swiss contemporary composer, Peter Streif, born in Bern, Switzerland, 1944. This is his Ground for Viola da Gamba, composed in 2016. Streif is another composer who has actively engaged with music of past times and has written several works recalling the Baroque. This work takes the ostinato bass of the song "Oh Let Me Weep" by Henry Purcell from The Fairy Queen and varies it in his own manner. The piece starts sounding like a Baroque work. Pretty soon, we get some more modern-sounding harmonies creeping in, usually as passing notes. The phrasing changes too. Let me see if I can get a little bit of all of this in the sample. Now, the viola da gamba is usually a very soothing sounding instrument, and it is here. You can tell by the constant changes of direction of phrase in the sample that this is not a Baroque-era work, though it does sort of move continuously like one. Those changes of directions that are constant like that wouldn't be done back then. By around 2 minutes and 30 seconds, there are some drawn-out double-stopped chords, some of them on odd, more modern-sounding harmonies. Harmonics come in the final minute of the work, and it ends on a harmonic double-stopped chord. Very nice. Track 9, we get the first of 3 works by François Couperin. The first one is called Le Regret, and this is part of our album's title. By now, our patient is having doubts and even regrets, which is the title of this piece. Couperin himself was dogged by poor health, which increasingly troubled him as he grew older. This actually feels refreshing after the winding, more directionless strife work. Baroque works always have a direction, and a telos, I guess you could say. They're aiming for a certain ending. The sound of the instrument is rather quiet and natural, and the harpsichord has got a bell-like chime to its higher notes. It's played with great clarity between the melody and bass by Matías Lanz. Track 10, François Couperin, Pompe Funèbre. This represents the first of 2 alternative endings to the story. One option is illustrated here as the patient dying from the after effects of his stone extraction. Couperin's Pompe Funèbre offers consolation. The viola da gamba features in this, and as you can imagine, it's pretty mournful sounding. Let's hear a bit of it. Well, I'm sad, listeners. Are you sad?
Yeah, but with such great tone.
Yeah. It's a pretty long piece at just over 6 minutes, and it's in sections, the first ending at 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and the second continuing in a mournful mood. The ending has a lovely, gentle touch to it on the viola da gamba. Okay, we don't have to have the sad ending. We can choose track 11, François Couperin, La Convalescente. He actually wrote a piece called La Convalescente. How convenient. The second alternative ending is to have the patient convalesce, as in this piece. The piece itself suggests a long, drawn-out recovery, though, as you'll hear. This is played by solo harpsichord and has a brighter, hopeful, though careful and attentive tone to it. Yeah, it kind of gives me the sense that I'm sitting in my easy chair just resting, as I often do these days.
And hopefully drinking a lot of water.
Yeah, that too. There's a bit of a lift in its step as we hear occasional dotted eighths inserted into the line. It pretty much keeps its positive mood right to the end. Okay, that's not the end of the program, though. We have one more work. It's a multi-movement work by our newly discovered Baroque composer, Georg-Philipp Telemann. Now, of course, we always knew about him, but last year we kind of discovered some pretty great works by him, and that gave us a bit of a different sort of opinion on his work. This is his Sonata in A minor for viola da gamba and basso continuo, TWV 41, lowercase a6, from his Esercizi Musicali, published in Hamburg, 1739 to 1740. Okay, so either way, whether the patient is now in heaven or healed on earth, he can listen or even dance to music by Telemann. The witty notes by harpsichordist Matías Lanz state that Telemann showed a productivity so great that it surely reflected a urinary calculus-free lifestyle. Okay, track 12. That's classical music humor, everyone. Track 12 is the first movement, Largo. The work begins with a bit of a wistful, melancholy melody in the viola da gamba. There's an appealing darkness to the tone here that draws me into the piece's lyricism. And track 13 is the second movement. I'm going to sample this one. So this is track 13, the second movement, Allegro. So this is, I guess, what you'd call a sonata a cappella, because it's got a slow first movement. I hope I'm saying that right. And a faster second movement. I can't remember the terminology. Anyway, let's hear the second movement. Fantastic and a very sprightly sounding work, uplifting, sounds great. The viola da gamba gets to show some bowing technique, as you heard. His rapid lines require constant, quick bow strokes, and the movement keeps up its upbeat energy to the end, with the harpsichord keeping time for the rapid viola da gamba playing. Nice playing by Alex Jellici here. Track 14, Soave. This is the third movement. Another very attractive melody played over a muted harpsichord. It immediately drew me in, so I have to sample this too. Very attractive playing and a great melody by Telemann there. The movement simply bathes in melody throughout. Jellici plays this beautifully, and I loved Lanz's subtlety and muted tone on this. And track 15, the fourth movement, Allegro. Here, Telemann comes up with yet another attractive melody for the viola da gamba, giving him some occasional virtuoso flourishes too. There's an occasional switch to triplets in the gamba line, showing some inventiveness on Telemann's part. The piece and album, with its rather heavy theme, ends on an upbeat note. Now, if it weren't for us, this is a recording that would have made the rounds in Swiss and other German-speaking circles without going much farther afield, and I certainly hope that through featuring it on our podcast here, it finds a bigger audience, because I think it deserves one. I rather enjoyed the fact that the program had a theme, and I found it to be creatively put together. The album can be listened to as a series of pieces, of course, but I suggest taking the time to read the booklet and imagine the narrative as you're listening. It makes the whole program more fun. Alex Jellici and Matías Lanz are very obviously dedicated to the music, producing well-balanced and well-recorded, so shout out to producer and engineer Max Malling, too. So well-balanced performances that communicate enthusiasm in the faster pieces and the appropriate gravity in the slower. It's an album with a lot of moods, and the narrative theme makes it all work. I'd recommend you hear this. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, this was a nice find. Alex Jellici's gamba is rich-toned, and his phrasing is always very musical, even on some of the more unusual pieces. Matías Lanz's harpsichord playing I found to be subtle, and he draws you in with delicate lines. The program is a little unusual, and putting the different pieces to a musical-medical narrative in the notes adds dimension to your listening. They are able to achieve a real continuity of performance, though, with the Baroque and modern pieces. And hearing modern compositions on these instruments from this period makes for a unique experience. The playing is enjoyable, and the recording sonics are very rich.
Yeah, so a good start to the year, huh?
Yeah.
With this unique find in Baroque music and a new label for us. This is the, give them another shout out, the Solo Musica label. All right, our second album features some very famous music by Brahms and Mozart. We have the Brahms Concerto for Violin and Cello, also known as the Double Concerto, and Mozart Sinfonia Concertante. This is performed by Leoš Čepický on violin and Michal Kanka on cello, and the Komorní Filharmonie Pardubice, conducted by Stanislav Vavřínek. This is on the Nimbus label, also released on January 2nd. All right, well, these two works are by very famous composers, but they're not works that I know all that well. Brahms wrote 4 concertos, and this is the one I know the least. There are 2 piano concertos, 1 violin concerto, and this one for violin and cello. Now, he wrote this when he wanted to make up with his longtime friend Joseph Joachim, who he wrote his violin concerto for. They were apparently on the outs toward the end of his life. Brahms was missing Joachim and wanted to make up with him. So this winds up being more of a lyrical concerto rather than a really barn-burning one. It's very melodic. Track 1 is the first movement, very long first movement. It's a big sonata form, allegro. And here the cello is in with a winding line right after the big, quick orchestral statement of the opening. He's practically got a cadenza right at the opening. So let's hear this from the beginning and we'll get into the mood of this piece. Yeah, certainly not unusual to hear solo passages like that for the solo instrument in a concerto, but not right at the beginning like that. It's kind of odd. Pizzicati come in as well toward the end. When the orchestra is back at 1 minute and 25 seconds, it's got a pastoral sound, and then the violin comes in with the cello commenting. And I want to hear a bit of that too, because we have to get the violin in too, right? Let's hear it. Okay, and another cadenza-like passage is only this time for both solo instruments. This turns into a big solo section without the orchestra, and the tones on the 2 instruments are as differentiated as their ranges are. Čepický sounding sweet-toned on the violin, and Kanka on the cello sounding deeper and throaty. Finally, at 2 minutes and 32 seconds, the orchestra makes a big thematic statement. The cello takes over the theme at 4 minutes and 33 seconds, with the violin following, as the 2 dovetail in harmony with each other here. At 6 minutes and 7 seconds, the cello introduces a slower, lilting theme. It's melodic and attractive in a way Brahms had with melodies, and played sweetly in the cello's mid-range. The violin joins in after a full cello statement. The violin then introduces a more aggressive theme. This leads to a kind of development with quick key changes between brief phrases. At around the 10-minute and 40-second mark, the violin and cello are together for a lyrical section that reaches up the scale. At 11 minutes and 39 seconds, we hear one of the bold opening themes from the orchestra with the violin and cello intertwining their lines during their solo section. I liked hearing the violin in the lead with a slower theme at around the 12-minute and 55-second mark, So I'm going to give you a sample of that as well. This is later in this same movement. And the violin comes in with a more aggressive theme after that. At 14 minutes and 30 seconds, there's a double-stopped staccato section that leads into an extended buildup of tension via the orchestra's not quite reaching where it wants to go. It gradually makes its way there, though, and the violin and cello play one last theme at around the 15-minute and 40-second mark before leading the orchestra to the final chord. The second slow movement, track 2, the Andante. Some characteristic pastoral horns from Brahms start the movement, and then they're followed by a sweet unison melody by the violin and cello. Let's hear the movement's opening. There's a lot more where that came from in this movement. The theme is repetitive, as you heard, and it's immediately appealing, almost folk-like, really. I think it leans toward Dvorak in this case. I know that Brahms really liked Dvorak's music, and he really liked sort of folk-like themes, though he didn't use them all the time in his music. He used a lot of Hungarian themes in his music. The violin and cello then trade idyllic melodic lines after the 2-minute mark. I like the lyrical playing of the two soloists here. They sound of one mind, as the piece intends them to. The middle solo section leads back to the opening theme. This is an ABA form movement, and we hear the opening theme sounding even warmer and gentler here. Great sensitivity by the two soloists, and gentle winds bring the movement to a close. Track 3 is the third and final movement, Vivace non troppo. There's something rustic and teasing about this rondo theme. It's not a high-speed virtuosic movement, more of mid-tempo here. The tempo marking says vivace non troppo, and this leans on the non troppo more than the vivace, I have to say. Although it is lively. Vivace means lively. It doesn't necessarily mean fast, but usually lively is interpreted as fast. This is going for something lyrical, and there's plenty of lyricism here. I liked the sawn-out first solo moment from the cello and violin. The cello plays the theme with a deep tone and double-stopped, and it's really satisfying. Let's hear this. Okay, so at the end, I got a bit of the rondo theme in there as well. These more lyrical moments often burst out into energetic, playful sections of music. There's some gorgeous writing in this movement for orchestra as well as for solo instruments. After the 5-minute mark, the orchestra makes a bold statement, sweeping up the soloists and leading back to the rondo theme afterwards, which features skittering cello and violin here. The orchestra then boldly restates the theme, after which the cello and violin duet in a lyrical theme. There's a brief coda that leads to the big ending, and that's the end of that piece. Tracks 4 through 6 are Mozart's Sinfonia Concertante in E-flat major for violin and viola, Koelschel 364/320D. Now, we're hearing a cello here, not a viola, but Kanka plays the cello part in the viola range with no transposition. And this is a little strange, I have to say, because the cello has a bigger kind of throatier sound than the violin does. The violin tends to shade towards a darker kind of sound. So there's a different quality to this than we usually get. Track 4 is the first movement, Allegro Maestoso, and this is a pretty big orchestra playing this work. We're so used to the leaner sounding period instrument orchestras these days, but it sounds like this is played by a full modern orchestra. There's a full warm sound, something we used to hear when we were very young, Russ.
Yeah.
And the flow is fine, and tempo is comfortable. I like the way the cellos are accenting the chugging rhythm at the opening. Bass comes through strongly. The brass are also very present, unusual in a Mozart work. The soloists finally come in at around the 2-minute and 10-second mark, blending in with the orchestra. You can hear that the lower instrument is a cello due to its tone, even though it's in the work's original range. It sounds heavier without the viola's dark-shaded, opaque sound. Let's hear a bit of both instruments playing this. And the violin is in with its theme. The two soloists bring out the lyricism of Mozart's melodies, and the tempo, on the slow side but still having energy, gives them the space to do so. This is very much not done in a period style. There's plenty of vibrato used on both instruments, and they're going for maximum expressiveness here. Within the bounds of good taste, of course. Just the way the cello moans out its line at 6 minutes and 10 seconds is something you'll never hear on a viola. Let's hear a little bit of that. The brass figure in the developmental section where the two instruments are soloing, and they're very present. The recapitulation of the opening theme comes back at around the 7-minute mark and takes a while to unspool. At 11 minutes and 40 seconds, both instruments have a simultaneous cadenza, and they use it to play off each other, the cello playing a lot of double-stopped chords under the violin's unwinding line. There's a brief return to the thematic material as the movement heads to its final cadence. Track 5 is the second movement, Andante. This is in a minor key and gets a dark sound here with a slowly throbbing rhythm. It's got a Lost in the Fairy Tale Woods feeling to it. The violin plays first, starting at its lower end and making it harder to identify as a result. The cello then repeats its line. The line sounds particularly lyrical on the cello. Let's hear it. There are some attractive moments where the violin and cello play together in harmony, too. Most of the movement is spent with the soloists answering each other's lines in lyrical fashion. The cello sound is particularly vivid and thick-sounding in this movement, given its opportunity to project and sustain many notes. The theme finally comes back and darkens further just before the cadenza starts at the 9-minute mark. This sets the two soloists off on a brooding set of simultaneously played cadenzas, with the cello often falling into accompaniment. The piece ends with a dark sense to it. But then the sixth movement, of course, it's Mozart. We're going to come back into the sunshine. This is marked presto, and the piece here suddenly brightens up with a contrasting, sprightly, energetic tempo, and also it's in a major key. The brass once again get a chance in the spotlight during the theme, however brief. The violin is in with a cheerful theme at 1 minute and 8 seconds, and the cello follows. Let's hear their entries. The soloists maintain a strong sense of vibrato throughout, and again the cello's tone comes across strongly. This movement is a rondo with the two soloists returning to the sunny opening theme at various points of the movement. The departures give them a chance to interweave lines, and the movement remains upbeat throughout and reaches a satisfyingly solid conclusion in this performance. And that's the end of the album. I was glad to get the opportunity to hear the Brahms Double Concerto, a work I'm really not too familiar with. It eschews virtuosity for lyricism, though of course there is virtuosity. There has to be, right? It's well performed here by our two soloists, Leoš Čepický on the violin and Michal Kanka on cello. And in this piece in particularly, they sound of a single mind, like they know each other's thoughts and have been playing together for a long time. The Mozart Sinfonia Concertante comes across as an old-school recording before the days of period instrument use and practice. The orchestra gets a full sound, and much vibrato is used by the soloists. They're expressive and deliver a performance that will remind you of many years ago, but I have to say, I prefer the leaner, lighter vibrato of more recent Mozart recordings, whether on period instruments or not. It's an enjoyable performance, no matter what your preference is, though the thickness of the cello's tone oddly matches well with the strong brass. Komorní Filharmonie Pardubice, conducted by Stanislav Vavřínek, keep the accompaniment steady and flowing in a more relaxed old-school fashion, which gives the soloists plenty of room for expression. It's an enjoyable album of some lesser-heard works by two of the great composers.
Yeah, I found this really enjoyable too. Čepický and Kanka play well together, expressively, and with a sense of enjoyment that comes through. And this is a later Brahms work. It's relatively lighter than what we usually associate with his style, but it's very expressive. I like the playfulness of the third movement. And Čepický has a sweet and engaging violin tone, and Kanka's cello tone is warm but flexible. And it was interesting to hear the cello used on the viola parts, as you pointed out, in the Mozart work. The andante there has some sadness or melancholy moods that were well expressed, and the final presto has the two in great interplay. And the orchestral balance is good throughout the recording, and it's also a very fine-sounding recording overall with good sonics.
Okay, and we get a contemporary composer this week, and what a great title for an album to begin the year with. It's called Sing to the World, and let's do that this year, okay?
Yeah.
This is a collection of choral compositions by the American composer Dan Locklair. Now, Locklair was born in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1949, and the recording features Iain Farrington on piano, the Phoenix Consort, and they're directed by Adam Whitmore, and this is released on Convivium Records on January 2nd. The first work on the album is called Sing to the World. It was commissioned and composed in 2019, premiered on 15 May 2022, in Myers Park United Methodist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Locklair's hometown. Each of the poems set here celebrates music, and another great way to start the year for us here at Adult Music. Track 1 is the first of the 5 movements. It's called That Music Always Round Me, and the poem is by Walt Whitman. First, I have to say, there's very clear sound on this recording. That really makes the recording work well, because you hear this sort of choral writing, and you can almost hear each individual voice. It's pretty amazing. Let's give it a sample. The writing is warm and inviting, as is the Phoenix Consort's sound. The recording allows the listener to isolate the various lines. Excellent mic placement here, too. The piece itself is mostly traditional harmony, and the work makes for a very pleasant listen. Track 2, the second movement, The Singers, poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. This has more of a masked voice approach at the beginning, again with a warm overall sound. The composition is slower and works well with dynamics and expressing the text. Beautiful clarity at all ranges, and this is partly the composer's doing, as he gives opportunities at times for certain voices to be isolated. This work goes on for about 7 minutes and features several changes of approach in its various sections, and there's this one intoxicating subtle dissonance on the final resolve. It's an interesting composition. Track 3, the third movement, An Hymn to the Morning. That's hymn, H-Y-M-N, but they've started it with Anne. This is by Phyllis Wheatley. Wheatley was the first African-American woman to publish a book of poetry. And here, alternating counterpoints to the poem are the melody and first stanza text of the 19th century African-American spiritual, My Lord, What a Morning. The piece opens with humming. Let's hear that. The solo vocalist here is Beth Yates, the soprano, and others are alto Emma Kerrigan, tenor Matthew Holloway Strong, and bass Alexander Lee. You hear them as the piece goes on. All have smooth, creamy-sounding voices in the acoustic, well captured on the recording. The piece moves from solos to the choir and has a lot of textural variety as a result. The spiritual feel is heard throughout. At the end, we get away from Wheatley's poetry and hear a verse of the spiritual. Track 4, the fourth movement, Master of Music, the poem by Henry Van Dyke, and he was an American poet, educator, and clergyman. I like the way the change of poets brings about a change of approach, as each poet has his own style. The cadences of the music are shaped around the line, and this particular poem has Locklair prolonging some melodies to get it all in. I rather like the way he achieves it. Again, expression in the music is shaped by the words and their meaning. Track 5, the fifth movement, The Musical Ass, an English translation of a humorous poem by the neoclassical Spanish poet Tomás Iriarte, who lived 1750 to 1791. Not much longer than Mozart did. Wow. This has a more straightforward, folk-like approach in which the music accents the comic element of the text. I don't think of the word accident as being particularly musical, but Locklair unlocks its musicality here. Let's hear a little bit of that. Listen for that word. I like that hocketing back and forth between the different voices as well. Really interesting composition. And the word accident appears throughout the piece. Okay, track 6 is a piece called For This Is Love, composed in 2016, commissioned by Wake Forest University professor of counseling Sam Gladding as a surprise gift to his wife, Claire, on the occasion of their 30th wedding anniversary. You might want to think about doing that for your special someone in your life. Get a professional composer to compose something for them and pay them a lot of money for that. Also hire an orchestra and a singer to sing it. The text is by Robert Frost from his poem A Prayer in Spring. The theme we hear in the piano introduction is symbolic of love in the piece. This is in fact the first time we're hearing a piano on the recording. His ending of the final phrase in his theme results in a jump in key that lifts the spirit. We hear that leap quite a bit in the piece, and you'll hear it in this sample. Beautiful piece, and I'm telling you, if you do this to for your significant other, they'll never forget it. There's nice glow to the harmony in the forte sections of this piece, pushed forward by those sudden key changes. Track 7, Bond and Free, a 2012 composition, setting the words to a poem by Robert Frost. This is a cappella. There's an appealing lilt to the movement of the melodic line. The harmony is again warm and full-sounding. As the work approaches its end, the voices proceed in full-sounding harmony with some interesting chord changes along the way. Tracks 8 through 10, a set of 3 movements called The Lilacs Bloomed, composed in 2009, based on the first 3 stanzas of a Walt Whitman's lengthy 1865 poem, Memories of President Lincoln. Track 8, the first movement, I Mourned, starts with a piano line with some slight edge to the harmony. The Phoenix Consort comes in and calms it down a bit, entering in full harmony and singing some interesting chord changes as they reach a climax via a slow crescendo. Track 9, the second movement, Fallen Star, provides contrast. It sets Whitman's agonizing and almost uncontrollable verses of grief and despair in a visceral and dramatic manner. The movement quotes a well-known tune associated with the Civil War, originally known as John Brown's Body. Julia Ward Howe transformed it into her 1861 hymn, Mine Eyes Have Seen the Glory, and we know it as the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Right.
Yeah, big crashing piano chords begin the movement, and let's hear the opening. So a more dramatic movement there. Track 10, the third and final movement, A Miracle. Lilacs link the first and third stanzas of a Walt Whitman's poem, and so this and the first movement are musically linked too. Also, in this movement, a chaconne provides the harmonic foundation of the movement as it symbolizes the enduring lilac bush. It's more wistful and soothing. The singing here has a discursive quality to it, as words generally change with each note. Track 11, For Amber Waves, composed in 1992. The text is the first stanza of America the Beautiful by the New England poet Catherine Lee Bates. In the soprano solo at the end, there's a suggestion of Samuel Ward's famous tune long associated with this text. The tune was called Materna. The piece starts quietly with droning voices. The harmony builds up to something eerie. The famous tune is barely recognizable, but you'll recognize the text, and there are some interesting quarter tones sung as well. That one really got my attention. Yeah, it didn't sound anything like I thought it would. In fact, this is probably the most harmonically adventurous piece we've heard on the album. It's still eminently approachable, though. It's got a hush to its sound, and Locklair does a lot of experimenting with the harmony here. Track 12, Tapestries, composed in 1982 to a poem by Rabindranath Tagore. This starts with a quiet piano ostinato. Bass voices come in with a droning quality, and the sopranos sustain a high harmony over that. It's a pretty captivating opening. Chiming bells are heard in the piece too, and they really catch the ear as a new timbre. There are flute-like sounds too, but all we're hearing are the consort, bells, and piano, so I'm wondering what that sound is. Once the text starts at around the 3-minute mark, the Phoenix Consort are chanting it over an exotic ostinato. Exotic note bends are used as a way of dipping to lower chords. The piece goes on for 7 minutes, sounding hypnotic throughout. Track 13, The Cloths of Heaven, a 2013 composition, setting a poem by William Butler Yeats called Ed Wishes for the Cloths of Heaven. It's a cappella and is a return to Locklair's clean sound and solid harmony. There's subtle expression on the text in this. The choir sings gently. Towards the end, there's a pleasant 2-note dipping phrase that repeats until just before the opening comes back, and this harmony leads the piece to its end. Tracks 14 through 18 is a piece called Changing Perceptions, and there's also track 19, a piece called Epitaph, that actually connects to this. Changing Perceptions was composed in 1987, and the poetry concerns issues of life and death, and begins and ends with movements based on poetry by the Arizona-based poet Carol Adler. Okay, so I guess it ends in death because we do attach the piece Epitaph to this. Track 14 is the first movement, What Do We Know About Life? I think the flute sound here is people whistling, perhaps. The piece has a circling ostinato piano line. The choral material itself has a spiraling feel to it. Let's hear a little bit of it. And you heard those eerie whistling sounds in there. This circling pattern continues throughout, giving the movement a hypnotic quality. Track 15 is the second movement, AMH, based on poetry by the Kennebunkport, Maine poet Christine Teal Howes. The title refers to her stillborn son, Arthur McKeary Howes, and the piece reflects her grief. The piano part includes William Billings' moving hymn tune When Jesus Wept as counterpoint to the choral parts. It starts low on the piano. The choir has some heavenly high notes. The poem is really sad. Lower him gently. He sleeps forever. And so on, in that vein. It's sung quietly, and the harmony lowers as the line goes on. The progression of the melodic line slows down as the piece goes on. There's a build-up to a fortissimo heard at 3 minutes and 5 seconds, gentle piano notes carefully placed at the end of the movement. Track 16, the third movement, Grief Poem, Words are by the Japanese-Canadian poet Joy Kogawa. This begins rather straightforwardly with transparent, quiet harmony. I rather enjoyed how at about the 1 minute and 27-second mark, the balance shifts towards the women's voices. That marks the work's climax. The opening is briefly repeated, and the movement ends. Track 17, the fourth movement, High Flight. The poem is by John G. McGee, Jr. The poem itself was used by President Reagan to help console a nation in shock following the 1986 Challenger space capsule disaster. In the piano accompaniment, the hymn tune St. Anne, O God, Our Help in Ages Past, is spread throughout the movement. This features piano. It comes in with a bold glissando followed by an equally bold forte pattern. It's pretty uplifting. The choir is ebullient as well. At 1 minute and 27 seconds, the piano suddenly drops out, and we're airborne with the words of the chorus alone. It's a well-calculated moment. From this point, the music continues at a piano dynamic. Once the line reaches a high note, a fortissimo dynamic breaks the spell, and the piano makes one more bold swoop to lead to the end. Track 18, the fifth movement, Like the River That Passes Away. The piano plays contemplatively here, as the consort comes in with a bit of distance to their voices. The movement comes across with some warmth. Towards the end, we hear those whistles that have featured through so many movements. And then finally, track 19 is a work called Epitaph. This work is intended to always be sung after the five-movement Changing Perceptions that we just heard. It's meant to remind us that even death need not always be taken seriously. The text is from an anonymous epitaph from an old Norfolk, England tombstone. The piece is brief and very ebullient, with a bold, loud piano line in a kind of older popular style. The choir sings in pinpoint harmony, all harmonizing each syllable together as one voice. It's a comic way to end the album, which has been pretty serious, so let's send the listeners off with a sample. So, here we have an album of refreshing choral works, in traditionally beautiful harmony. All of the works set texts with deep meaning, well, except Epitaph, the final piece. And the Phoenix Consort draw a lot of inspiration and expression from them. Big shout out to the engineer Adak Khan and producer George Richford for the sound and performance they captured here. We get an in-the-room sense of the recording, so three-dimensional and well-defined is it. Locklair's compositions are inspired by the texts, and for that reason display a great variety of approaches. Choral lovers will have to hear this album, but I have to say the album transcends its traditional circles and will appeal to all audiences, not least due to the immaculate performances of the Phoenix Consort, their director Adam Whitmore, and pianist Iain Farrington. This is one worth hearing all the way through, though it's long, so perhaps take it in parts.
This was enjoyable on multiple levels. Dan Locklair's use of harmony runs from traditional to modern, with wide-open types of vocal intervals that often catch your attention. Some quarter tones, too, that you pointed out. But it never sounds uncomfortable. He often uses harmony to highlight a meaning in the lyrical content, and the numerous poems and other material are integral to the enjoyment and understanding of the music. So I was very pleased that everything is included in the program notes, something we'd like to get used to.
Yeah.
I liked contemplating the lyrical content while listening to the music, and the Phoenix Consort sounds wonderful and expressive with the music here. It's a very enriching listen if you take the time to get inside of it. All right, over to the jazz side. Unlike Mike, I dipped back into December for a couple recordings here.
Yeah, it's still permitted.
But I think it was worthwhile for these fine recordings I've got here to share with you for this episode. And we're going to start out with a debut recording. We're going to go over to Italy for introducing Antonio Scannapieco from young trumpeter Antonio Scannapieco on the Emme Records label. This came out on December 24th, which is Scannapieco's birthday. How about that?
Yeah, great.
Antonio Scannapieco started playing trumpet at the age of 7. He studied classical and jazz music at the Salerno Conservatory and then moved to Paris to gain new musical experiences, playing with artists like Mario Biondi, Stefano Di Battista, Flavio Boltro, and Fabrizio Bosso. This quintet here was the winner of the Conad Jazz Contest in 2024, a contest connected with Umbria Jazz for Italian musicians from ages 18 to 25.
You know, Umbria would be a great place to live.
Oh, it would be really nice, yeah.
Yeah.
This quintet here is Antonio Scannapieco on trumpet, Pasquale Geremia on tenor sax, Guglielmo Santimone on piano, Giulio Scianatico on the bass, and Angelo Gregorio on the drums. Producers are Francesco Lupi and Enrico Mozza, mixing engineer also Francesco Lupi. The recording is going to get underway with the Scannapieco original composition, Little Roy. This is a charming tune to start out with. It's a 32-measure AABA form. The trumpet and sax melody splits into harmony and spots, and the rhythm section stops up underneath. Gregorio has nice fills on the way. Let's hear this recording get going. Scannapieco is off from there on a solo. He has really nice phrasing and melodic ideas. Let's come back in and hear his second chorus. Geremia follows on tenor sax, soft-toned and relaxed, but with nice facility. Scannapieco has a melodic bass solo too, before once more through the melody, with some final phrase repeats that build up to the end. Track 2 is a tune by Pasquale Geremia, Morningless, a minor and longing melody with a bossa feel. It's 32 measures of similar halves with slightly different endings. Geremia weaves phrases around Scannapieco's lines. Santamoni has nice little piano chimes in between the horn phrases and is up first for a solo. Let's check this one out. Uses space nicely in his piano solo to create anticipation, and he also has some nice two-handed lines. Let's check out Geremia's solo on his own composition. Smooth phrasing, and he continues on as Scannapieco returns with the melody before joining in for the second half. It's a nice idea, and the ending gets a final sax phrase. Track 3 is Red House Street, and it's credited to Scannapieco, Geremia, and Gregorio. This is a really exciting one, a post-bop modal tune with tricky horn lines switching up between Latin and swinging feels. There are two sections that repeat. The first one sounds like 19 measures plus an extra 2-beat bar, and then a 16-measure section. Let's take a listen. The solos follow a minor 12-bar blues progression, and Scannapieco and Geremia trade choruses into shorter phrases and simultaneous improvisations. Let's check out Santamoni's percolating piano solo into the start of Gregorio's drum solo on this one. and the tune ends up with just one time through each of the melody sections. Track 4, a Scannapieco original, Awakening. This is a short one with Scannapieco musing over just Gregorio's tom-centered drum work. It sounds like he's on flugelhorn here. I'll leave you to check it out on your own, as it's only 1 minute and 20 seconds long. Track 5, another Scannapieco original dedicated to Emme, a pretty ballad in an AABA 32-measure form. Jeremiah gets to take the B section. We won't get that far in a sample, but let's hear it get started. Scannapieco gets the first solo here over the A sections of the melody, so let's hear some of his warm melodic playing. Jeremiah is back from the B section of the melody, and both horns have some final cadenza-like lines to finish off the tune. Track 6, another Scannapieco original, Nulla accade per caso. Nothing happens by chance. Scannapieco starts it out with an ostinato bass idea, getting joined by piano and drums. The melody is in an AAB structure of 16-measure sections. The horn lines start out with long legato phrases, but then get animated and jumpy. Santamone adds piano ripples on the final section. Santamone is up first for a piano solo from a quiet start. Scannapieco shows nice agility and development of his ideas in his solo on this one, so let's jump in midway and check some of it out. More through the melody, and an outro like the intro section finishes it up. Track 7, another Scannapieco original, The Way We Used to Be. This one's a waltz with a repeating 16-measure melody line. Scannapieco takes the first time through and gets joined by Jeremiah with a harmonized line the next time around. Scannapieco is up first for a solo. His balancing of snappy licks with a lyrical sense on this one. Jeremiah works up some harmonic tension and intensity in his sax solo, so let's check him out on this tune. From there, with some final simultaneous horn improvisations to a fade-out. Track 8 is another Scannapieco original, Night Conversation. This is an atmospheric little tune with a unique subdivided groove from Cianetico and Gregorio, who gets it started on the drums. The legato trumpet melody sounds like it would make a good detective show theme. It's in an AAB shape of 16-measure sections. Let's hear it get started. Jeremiah joins in for some relaxed improvisations with Scannapieco, and after a final B section of the melody, the rhythm section takes it to a fade-out with reverby atmospheric piano. And the recording ends up with a final Scannapieco original Wayne for Mr. Shorter, perhaps. It's a hard bopper with a 32-measure melody with some rhythmic change-ups. Jeremiah is up for the first solo. And let's hear one more from Scannapieco for our final sample. Range and agility with those ideas. Santamone follows with an energetic piano solo, and then sax, trumpet, and piano do some trading with Gregorio's drums before he gets some extended solo drum time. A final time through the melody wraps up the tune and the recording. This is a group of young Italian musicians with a firm base in the post-bop jazz tradition, but with fresh ideas and energy to make appealing new music. Antonio Scannapieco's trumpet playing shows good technique and range, and his solos have a mature concept of phrasing, space, and melodic direction. His compositions give the program a variety of moods and feels, from bopping, blues, and ballads to a waltz and the uniquely atmospheric night conversation. Jeremiah makes a good partner on harmonized horn lines and enjoyable sax solos. Santamone's piano backing is tasteful, and his solos were interesting and varied. And Ciantico and Gregorio on bass and drums round things out with flexibility on any kind of groove, swinging nicely and switching up to Latin and other feels. I'm sure these young Italian fellows will be making a lot more jazz we'll want to check out in years to come.
Yeah, great playing and good solid sound on the entire band by the engineer on this album. The recording brings a lot of polish to the already varied tones of Antonio Scannapieco and Pasquale Jeremiah. Both tones have great presence on the album, and both solo melodically for the most part. The album itself has a lot of variety to it, so each track is rather a surprise as to what tempo we're getting. The playing is stylish by all musicians throughout the album, and Angelo Gregorio hits hard and with energy when he gets a chance to solo. This is an instantly appealing album. It's melodic jazz in a variety of styles.
Yeah, I'm glad I looked at the Emme homepage and saw this one, because I didn't see it show up on any other new release lists. So
yeah, we all did a bit of detective work last week.
Yeah. All right, next we're going to hear from pianist Rick Rowe with Wake Up Call, the music of Gregg Hill on Gregg Hill's label, Cold Plunge Records. This came out on December 19th. Now, we started out last year with a recording by Rick Rowe of Gregg Hill's music in episode 196, Off the Beaten Path, and we're doing it again this year. And this is the 6th recording of Hale's music we've listened to. In addition to Rick Rowe's previous recording Tribute, we've heard recordings by Rodney Whitaker, Michael Deese, the Technocats, and guitarist Randy Napoleon. And according to the album notes here, this is the 19th recording of the Lansing, Michigan-based composer's music in the last decade, with a catalog of over 200 songs. Rick Rowe is a pianist, composer, and educator in southwestern Michigan. He's produced or co-produced over a dozen jazz recordings. His first recording on his own R&R Unknown Records label was called Monk's Modern Music with Rodney Whitaker and Gregg Hutchinson, and he's taught at Michigan State University and been a guest artist and clinician at the University of Arizona, North Texas University, and Juilliard Jazz. On this recording, Rick Rowe on the piano, Robert Hurst on bass, Nate Wynn on drums, and Marcus Elliott on tenor and soprano sax, all compositions by Greg Hill and all arrangements by Rick Rowe. And the recording notes say that Hill gave Rowe freedom to arrange his compositions in his own unique way. Rowe says, "What a gift. It enhances that feeling of collaboration, allowing me to listen and respond with whatever the music triggers." And Hill says, "I tell the arrangers to go wild. That's why they like me." So the recording is going to start out with a tune called Inside Straight. Wynn kicks it in on the drums, and it's a 12-bar blues to start things out. It stays rather straight in the 5th bar, and the harmonies are unique. Let's hear it go around twice, Elliott taking it up an octave the second time and getting started on a sax solo. Let's come back in to hear Rowe's solo that starts out with a light and playful touch and then digs in with more bluesy chords. Hurst is next with some really busy fingers on his bass solo on this tune. Rowe and Elliott trade fours with Wynn's drums before getting back to a couple final rounds of the melody. Track 2, Sunspiration. It's a sunny waltz. The notes say that Rowe came up with the introduction built from the rhythmic second half of the A section. That's a repeating 8-measure idea, and then he raises it a step going into the B sections. You'll hear the lift. There's another A section and a shorter 6-measure final section, and Elliott's on soprano sax on this one. Let's check it out. on a light and snappy solo, let's check out Elliot's soprano sax solo on this one. Track 3, the title track, Wake Up Call, and the notes say he'll conceive this one as a fast swinger, a humorous evocation of a challenging 5 a.m. lobby call for touring musicians. And he wrote an AAB form with a quirky stop-and-go 5-bar A section. And there's an 8-bar bridge, too. And that's how the Michael Deese Quintet played it on the other shoe on Origin Records. We talked about that one. I went back to hear that again, and this is indeed completely different. The tempo is slowed, the A section is extended to 8 measures, and the kind of tango beat is really unique. Off on a solo from there. Let's check out Rose's fun solo on this tune. Great groove going on underneath there. And once more through, the quirky melody wraps it up. Track 4, Wide River. This one's a slow waltzing ballad. A cymbal roll brings in the rhythm section for an 8-measure intro, and Elliot takes the AABA 32-measure pretty melody with a breathy tenor tone. Let's hear it get started. Rose's solo on this tune shows off his light touch and a nice sense of timing, and Elliot is airy and fluttery. I'll leave you to check out the solos on this one since we've got 10 tracks to get through on this recording. Track 5 is the return of Mr. P. This one is fun and quirky in a Monk Brubeck kind of way. As best I can figure, the melody is 41 measures. The second measure only has 3 beats, and there's a little riff that keeps coming around. Elliot and Rowe exchange sections on the way. Let's hear it get going into the start of Rowe's solo. Let's hear a little bit of Elliot's tenor playing on this one. Section is abbreviated, and the tune is less than 3 minutes long altogether. Track 6, Modal Yodel number 2, a post-bop tune in an AABA form with 12-measure A sections and an 8-measure B. The A sections are super syncopated, and the B switches up to walking bass. Elliot continues on with the solo. Solo with a lot of dexterity too, and after another time through the melody, they vamp around for wind to work the drums, so let's check out the ending of this one. Track 7 is La Canción, the song, a Latin tune. Elliot is back on soprano sax. The 8-measure intro has legato lines that contrast with the rhythmic melody. It's a repeating 16-measure minor melody idea. The notes point out that the change to E major in the 10th measure really gives it a lift. Keep your ears open for that. Off on a soprano solo from there. On this one, let's check out Hurst's bass solo. So catches some bluesy edges to it on this one. Track 8 is The Ringer, and this one's a lot of fun. There's a 16-measure intro with improvisations from Elliot. That's in 5/4 time, and the changes will bring to mind Monk's Well You Needn't. Things switch up to 3/4 time for the melody that's 40 measures long with more monkishness at the end of the bridge section. Let's have a listen to this. Rose's solo has more monk influence and bluesy ideas, so let's keep on listening on this one. has a bass solo next. After they go around the melody again, they switch it back to 5/4 like the intro section for Elliot to play some more to a slowed up finish. Track 9 is Hyperbarity, and this tune has a split personality. The first minute is a repeating ominous chord cycle that Wynn gets to work the drums under. Then suddenly a sunny bopping melody appears. It sounds like the same 16 measures around twice with Elliot back on soprano. Let's jump in about 30 seconds in so we can hear a little bit of each part of the tune. Off on a solo from there, and they alternate the two sections of the tune, with the opening chord section there lending to more modal ideas. Rowe follows, having fun bringing out the contrast between the two sections with a lot of swinging charm, and they wrap it up with a final time through the melody with final phrase repeats. And the recording ends up with track 10, Double Play. This one swings along with a 36-measure melody of 12-bar sections. The last section gets a little lift, and then Hurst is off on a playful bowed bass solo. Rowe and Elliot both have solos too, and after another time around the melody, they keep it vamping for some improvised exchanges. It's easy to hear why musicians like playing Gregg Hill's compositions. He has a real gift for writing catchy melodies, and he crafts them in structures that have interesting quirks and inventive ideas. He seems to enjoy giving musicians freedom to add their own creative adjustments, and the results are a lot of fun to listen to, especially in the capable hands of Rick Rowe. Rowe has personalized this collection of tunes and draws out the features of each one with creative arrangements and improvisations. He's really a versatile pianist with a range from a light and classy swinging touch, enthusiastic digging in on bluesy phrases, and more forceful playing when the mood calls for it. Robert Hurst on bass and Nate Wynn on drums, who we also heard on the previous trio recording, are good partners again, locking the rhythm section together, and Hurst has some impressive bass solos on the recording. And Marcus Elliott adds another melodic voice this time, with great tone on tenor and soprano saxes and enthusiastic solos that weave through all the different styles and emotions. This recording will make your toes tap and get you thinking at the same time.
Yeah, I said something similar to you about Gregg Hill's music and the musicians. It brings a lot out of them. They often have to solo around highly syncopated rhythms, and each comes up with interesting approaches, some adding to the complexity, and others dropping into the syncopated cracks. I thought Rick Rowe himself kind of played in those syncopated cracks, especially in track 3, Wake Up Call. In fact, I enjoyed his piano playing throughout the album. He's got some really tasteful bluesy licks in his toolbox as well, and I enjoyed his very interesting solos throughout. Wide River and Inside Straight stood out for me as far as the piano solos went, and it's no surprise now that Gregg Hill's music inspires Rowe, and he shows it in his playing. Robert Hurst's bass solos were mildly adventurous and always expanded into new areas as though wandering into them. Gregg Hill's music comes in all tempos and forms, and we get a good selection of that variety here. Rowe and his quartet make an excellent case for it again.
Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be one too. Seems like Gregg Hill has a lot of music.
Yeah. All right, and our final recording from guitarist Dave Stryker, Blue Fire, the Van Gelder Sessions. This is on his own Strikezone Records label, and this came out January 9th. Thanks to Anne Braithwaite for the promotional materials and information on this one. Been waiting for it to come out.
Thanks, Anne.
Dave Stryker, a Nebraska native, came to New York in 1980, and now he's recorded more than 30 of his own recordings as a leader. We've discussed 2 previous Dave Stryker recordings. In episode 46, Fretboard Free for All, from January of 2022, we talked about As We Are. And in episode 101, Hammered It Up, from February 2023, we talked about Prime.
He's getting some good episode titles, I have to say. Now I feel like we're under pressure to come up with a good one today.
Yeah, we don't have one yet. We'll see if something comes out. The promotional material for this one says that Stryker had always wanted to record at Rudy Van Gelder's studio, but never got the chance while he was alive. And so this opportunity adds to the inspiration for recording this music here. So the trio is Dave Stryker on guitar, Jared Gold on organ, and McClenty Hunter on drums. It's produced by Dave Stryker, recorded at Van Gelder Recording Studio, Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey on July 14th, 2025, engineered by Maureen Sickler, who I believe was Rudy Van Gelder's partner in the studio there. Mixed and mastered at Trading 8's Studio, Paramus, New Jersey on July 29th, 2025 by Chris Solti. And we'll get underway with a tune that was written for this occasion. It sounds like Van Gelder's Place by Dave Stryker. It's a shuffling 12-bar blues to get things going. It's got a riffy melody, and Gold's organ bass sounds thick. He doubles Stryker's melody lines as it goes on. 2 times around, and Stryker is off on a solo. Let's hear this recording get going. And hear a few more choruses once he gets all wound up. sounding great. Fast lines, double stops, endless ideas. Gold follows with a solo that builds up a lot of tension. He's got a real edgy style, and he's not afraid to use dissonance. They do some trading fours with Hunter before a final round of the melody to finish things up. Track 2, the title track, Blue Fire, and a tricky title track it is. Between the cymbals, organ bass, and the melody, there's a lot of polyrhythmic things going on. The zippy, rising and falling unison guitar and organ melody line will make you dizzy. I'm not sure how they conceptualize the meter here, but you can count out the melody as 24 measures in 4 over the other things going on. There's an 8-measure interlude, and then it repeats. Let's check it out. Off on a driving 4/4 swing for Stryker's solo that's nimble with lots of ideas. On his last chorus, they bring back the last phrase of the melody, so you'll see how it fits in the rhythm. Let's check out some of Gold's solo on this and get some dissonance built up. And they vamp around from there for Hunter to do some speedy work around the drum kit before a final time through the melody. Track 3, Lennon and McCartney, The Fool on the Hill from 1967's Magical Mystery Tour. And this gets a sunny Brazilian beat. Everyone knows this melody, but you don't think that's what's coming with this feel and the 8-measure intro here. Off from there on a solo. I like how he uses parts of the melody in his solo and then brings it down softly to transition to Stryker's solo. Let's hear some of the trading they do at the end after going through the melody once more. And it goes on to a faded out ending. Track 4, Dexterity, from Charlie Parker, a tune he wrote in 1947 and recorded in 1950. It's time for some bebop chops here, but they give it a pretty relaxed treatment, and Gould's accompaniment ideas are really neat. Striker's off first on his solo there, getting a little fascinating rhythm quote in on the way, and finishing up with the end of the melody. Gould's solo is animated and interesting. Let's check out Hunter's drumming on this one. To the melody, once more from there. Track 5, a Dave Stryker original, Waiting for Ruby. Stryker gets a solo rubato guitar opening for this one. It's subtle with bass movement, chords, and a melody line. It's in an AABA structure with a half-length B section and a final 2 measures at the end of the melody. Let's come in just before a minute where the others join in. And let's hear some of Gould's more delicate touch on this tune. Stryker is next from there with a more gentle solo to a final melody section. It's a nice dreamy kind of tune. Track 6 is Back and Forth by Jared Gold. This one has a kind of funky rock beat. The melody goes around twice. It seems to be 38 measures in sections of 16, 16, and 6, and then another little transition to a solo from Gold. Let's hear it get going. Check out some of Stryker's guitar solo on this one as well. Fluid, building off some repetition and developing some smaller phrases into bigger ideas. It connects back to another time through the melody and a little extended ending. Track 7 is The Folks Who Live on the Hill, a Jerome Kern tune. I wonder if they're fools on the hill. This is from the musical High, Wide, and Handsome from 1937 and recorded in the same year by Bing Crosby. It's a ballad with another solo intro from Stryker. On this one, let's hear his great warm tone get it started. That's about all we can get in 1 minute. And I know this tune, but I've never paid attention to the structure, which is kind of unusual. It's got a repeating 12-measure section, a 6-bar bridge, and a final 14-measure section. After once around the melody, they go around again, Stryker taking the repeating first section for improvisations, Gold takes the short bridge, and they get back to the melody for the final section. I'll leave you to check this one out on your own. Track 8, a Stryker original, Every Dark Street, a slow 3/4 minor tune with a dark street bluesy atmosphere. After an 8-measure intro of rising figures, the melody is in an AABA 32-measure form. Let's check it out. Gold's solo is a lot of fun on this tune, so let's hear a little bit more of his playing. Stricker has some great bluesy lines, bends, and trills in his solo that burns with a slow intensity, and the tune ends with an outro like the opening. And the recording ends up with Summer Night, a tune from Harry Warren and Al Dubin from the 1936 movie Sing Me a Love Song. Nice drumming here from Hunter on the 8-measure intro with a 6/8 feel. It's a fun 24-measure melody. Let's come back in for one final sample with the speedy line into Stryker's second solo chorus. Solo is playful on this one. Stryker and Hunter do a little trading into a final melody section, and they keep it grooving with a build-up and then a quiet ending. Dave Stryker, Jared Gold, and McClenty Hunter make a great organ trio. Recording in the Van Gelder studio brings out the inspiration in this recording from the opening track named for the session right through the program that has a lot of variety of originals and a couple old classics from bebop, blues, ballads, Beatles, and the tricky title track. Stryker shows his versatility with fluid, speedy lines of endless ideas in his solos, biting bluesy licks, and softer ballad moments. Gold's organ solos are always interesting and sometimes quirky. He's fun to listen to and really drives things along with great bass lines. And Hunter's grooves are versatile with swing, funky beats, and soft brushwork. Top-notch playing all around.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that Beatles cover, The Fool on the Hill. That song doesn't get enough attention. Yeah, it's a good song, but it seems it sort of disappears in their catalog, you know? It's pretty good. I liked this album a lot. It opens with that blues, like you said, Van Gelder's Place, and you get a few upbeat rhythm tracks, and then some of the quieter tracks, which are the ones I really preferred. I actually liked all of them, but I really liked the mood, you know, that they achieved on the quieter tracks, like Waiting for Ruby and The Folks Who Live on the Hill,
right? And
also Every Dark Street. There was a real shimmer to them, and I really took to them right away. I thought Dave Stryker was the standout on the album. His tone sounded very present and attention-grabbing throughout, so I was kind of like riveted every time he played. And I did like Jared Gold's organ stylings. He keeps to pretty traditional yet deeply satisfying sounds on the instrument and plays musically throughout with an occasional brief virtuosic display, while McClenty Hunter keeps it solid in his playing and fairly subtle in his solos. You got to listen in to hear what he's doing. The sound quality on the album is clean, up front, and this is a good listen. It's, for the most part, Dave Stryker's show, though. I really liked his playing.
Yeah, really great playing. All right, and that's going to wrap it up for our first episode of 2026.
We're on our way.
We are. We're going to cross that 1,400 recording mark pretty soon here.
That's amazing.
Maybe next week. As always, we want to say thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo, and we've got a lineup for next week already. So what's on the classical menu, Mike?
Okay, so in Baroque, now last year, you'll remember we heard Cantata by Charpentier about the adulterous woman that Jesus saves from being stoned. And this year I've got another Bible cantata. This is the story of Jonah and the whale by Giacomo Carissimi. I can't even imagine what this is going to be like. It also features works by Monteverdi, his famous Lamento d'Arianna from a lost opera. That really kills me because I want to hear that opera because this is such a beautiful piece. I'd like to hear it in its context. And Lasso's Lagrime di San Pietro, that's by Giovanni Antonini and Il Giardino Armonico, along with the Chor der Bayerischen Rundfunks in Germany. So it's sort of an international collaboration. Next, we'll have an album that's already making waves all over other podcasts, Mendelssohn and Enescu's octets. And what's special about this is the Quatuor Eben and the Belsea Quartet, two really famous string quartets, have gotten together to fill out this octet. So I'm really looking forward to that. I bet it's going to be a high-powered set of performances. And then I thought we'd take a nod towards the cold weather and hear some Danish viola concertos. This is on the Da Capo label. The composers are Karsten Fundal, Christian Winter Christensen, and Søren Niels Eichberg. And the performer is Raphael Altino on the viola, Odense Symphony Orchestra, Pierre Blues, and David Dansmeyer, the conductors. So that's our lineup for next week on Classical.
All right. On the jazz side, we're going to start out with a couple recordings led by drummers, with a debut recording by a drummer who's been around for quite a while, Matt Garrity. This is on Steeplechase. It's called Suits and Scotches. He's originally from Ithaca, New York, but he's been on the New York scene for quite a while. So check that out. And we've got an interesting tune on there from film composer John Williams, so I won't spoil that for you. Next, we're going to go over to Italy with drummer Tommy Brodaccio with Time to Swing, featuring Cuban trumpeter Gendrickson Mena. And finally, guitarist Frode Schekstad with Stars Aligned on Lawson Records. We heard his last recording as an organ trio last year called Jazz Detectives, and we really liked that. That had Roy Powell on organ as well. And this time it's a quartet with the great Eric Alexander on tenor saxophone. And I checked this out last night. It's a lot of fun. And so it's going to be fun listening this week. All these recordings just came out Friday, January 9th. So we'll have a good jazz lineup as well. All these recordings, classical and jazz, we'll have together on our Deezer playlist. And that'll be up a few hours after this episode is published if you want to get listening with us during the week. Any final words for the first episode of this year, Mike?
Well, I don't have such high expectations for 2026, and yet we're hearing good music already, so it's already better than I thought it would be. So that's my advice to people, is have low expectations, and you'll always be surprised and delighted by what happens.
I don't think we'll be disappointed by the music anyway.
Yeah, at least that. I'm sure great stuff is coming out already.
All right. Looking forward to lots of music this year. So we'll see you again next week. And until then, keep listening.